Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel, where today we are going to be doing a full-length, non-spoilery review of To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. So, To Be Taught If Fortunate is an adult science fiction standalone novella, and in it we're following Ariadne, who is a crew member that is a part of this space exploration kind of program. So she and her 3 crew members are on a spaceship, and they are going to a star that is very far away so that they can do scientific research on the 4 exoplanets that are orbiting this particular star. And so to do this, they are basically put into a torpor kind of state, almost hibernation, and they are going there, and on the way there their bodies are changed to match the environment of the planet they are going to be studying next. Now, between how long this mission is supposed to take and the fact that their bodies are changing, Ariadne and the rest of the crew feel that their ties to Earth are maybe loosening up a bit, and the story goes from there. So let's just start with the world building, and I thought that the world building had a lot of really interesting ideas. The 2 that I liked the best were, first, that Ariadne and the other crew members are actually a part of this citizens space group. And I find this whole thing fascinating, like how this group came to be, why, how they got funded, what their mission statement is, like what their general beliefs are. I thought it was great. I really liked the backstory of this citizen space group. And the other thing that I really liked is that idea of our space explorers, our space scientists going to another planet and not setting up a habitat to make the environment suit them, but to actually change their body to suit the environment. So for example, one of the exoplanets that Ariadne and the crew end up on has a higher level of gravity, and so they end up changing their bodies to have a little bit more muscle mass and denser bones to handle that muscle mass, so that they are strong enough to deal with the extra amount of weight that everything is going to have on the surface of this planet. And I think that that's a fascinating idea. I don't know if it's been done in science fiction, although I assume it has, but I've never run into it, and I just find this such a fascinating approach to how do I live on another planet. So those are probably the 2 that I absolutely enjoyed the best. I will say that the exoplanets that we visit, we do get to see some of what's going on there, and I actually appreciated how kind of tame these planets really were, because that makes sense to me for life to evolve. I mean, we know that life can evolve in the extremes, but if we're going to go and visit these planets in the hopes of seeing something that is alive, it would make sense that it's not going to be the absolute extremes of what we experience here on Earth. That there's definitely going to be some things that are very, very different, but there are going to be things that are somewhat similar. So I really appreciated that approach. The only issue I had really with the world building is I just wanted a lot more details. Now, this is a novella, and this is and the world building is really in service of the larger themes of this book, so I completely understand why we didn't get those more details that I wanted, but yeah, that was really my only criticism. So moving into characters, and this is something that I found fascinating, although ultimately it didn't really work for me, but that is that the characters, honestly, I have distinct impressions of each of the crew members, but they really feel kind of like one entity, the crew. And I don't really know how to describe it. It's just that these characters were never truly individualized like we get with other stories. And because they do pretty much everything together, it makes sense why it would kind of become the crew. And especially because it's just them on a planet, they're the only humans on any on these exoplanets that they are going to. So it very much makes sense why they kind of turned into one entity. But it was kind of fascinating to watch that happen within the story. And honestly, even when they had a difference of opinions with each other, and or like were maybe fighting a little or bickering or any of that kind of stuff, even then it still felt like kind of like one entity, almost one hive mind. It was very interesting. I do think that the individual and even some of the group development that went on in this story is very, very subtle. So that's not generally my cup of tea. I tend to like it really like overt and concrete, and that's not quite what we got here. There is development. It's just very subtle and yeah, like I think easily overlooked. But one thing I really did appreciate is that the diverse representation that we got in this, especially in regards to race and queerness. So just of the 4 crew members, it's like, I believe one of them is white, one of them is black, one of them is Latinx, and one of them is of Asian descent. And then queerness, we have a trans person, we have an ace person, we have somebody who is bi or pan, and the last person is at least sapphic that we know of, and we don't know much more than that. So I just kind of like how we have a lot of representation here, and I like how casually it was done. It was just like, yeah, of course, like everybody's going to be different. So I really liked that. But what I found with the characters is that I get this impression of the crew, and I kind of wish I got a little bit more individualization of these characters, just because it made it more difficult for me to connect with them, because like it's more like connecting with a group rather than an individual, which I just find a little bit more difficult. Moving into the plot, I found the plot to be very basic, very straightforward, because it's really just a vehicle to talk about some of these larger questions that the premise of this book kind of set up. Now, I'm not going to talk about these questions because I tried to figure out a way to do it, but I have no idea how to talk about these questions without like massive spoilers. Just suffice it to say that there are some philosophical questions that are being asked. And one thing I thought was really interesting is that the premise set up these questions. We ask them in text, and then we start exploring them, but we don't go too in depth on it. It still stays very shallow. It's almost as if the intent was that the readers would ask these questions and start to see like the start of an answer, and then be encouraged to go think about it and explore these questions on their own after they've finished the book, which I think is a really interesting approach to that. And then the last thing I'll say about the plot is that at the end, there are a lot of questions that go unanswered. So if you are the type of person that likes to have a very neat wrap up at the end, this may not be the book for you. Moving into pacing, style, and structure. So the pacing tends to be medium to slow. And then the writing style of this is very introspective. We are in Ariadne's head, and most of what she's doing when we're with her is just kind of thinking about things. So very introspective. Sometimes the writing does get a little flowery, but for the most part, it is just that kind of introspective kind of feel. One other thing I will note is that there are content warnings for this book, specifically for suicidal thoughts and a suicide attempt. Now, I think that there are going to be a number of people that will read it and not necessarily come away with that impression, but I wanted to make sure that I mention it because I think that if you have dealt with suicidal thoughts in yourself or with others, I think it's pretty clear that that is what's going on, and I don't want anybody to be surprised. So just a heads up. But overall, I think that this was a very well-written book that has some very interesting ideas that is just not the kind of book that I tend to gravitate towards. I tend to like a little bit more character, a little bit more plot, maybe less philosophical questions, but I do recognize that this is a well-written book. So as such, like, my personal enjoyment of this was probably a 3.25 stars, but because of the quality of the writing, my official rating is 4 stars. So if you have any thoughts or feelings about anything that I have said here, or if you have read this book and would like to talk to me about it, leave me a comment down below. But that is all I have. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!